Hello guys, how's it going? We are live. All right, so today we're gonna be doing some work on the painting of our color, which is good, right? So it's kind of like I'm being cheating in this couple like days, like using a pre-made texture before, but now we're gonna go for the real deal. Let's try to paint a texture for this guy and explore some of those techniques. It might be a little bit different from some of the stuff you've been seeing, like on YouTube, for example. I noticed that someone posted something the other day about someone painting the poly painting in ZBrush by using very strong colors first, and then bringing all the tones all the way to a lighter tone. I don't approach quite like that. I think like that's a very cool approach though, because it reminds me of how people approach painting like the old time like prosthetics and stuff. Like it's like like the latex masks and things like that. Because you want to make sure, like remember, like back in the day, the movies, they want to make sure that those colors, like you're able to read them, right? Like with the lighting and all this stuff in the process of transforming it to film and then those colors sometimes like in the movie they look really great with the lighting and everything, and then when you look at the assets itself, it's like the little prop, the colors sometimes are so cheesy and they're very oversaturated and everything, but they used to do that kind of stuff, it's like to simulate like the subdermal layers and all that stuff. They would bring, it's like start with the darker tones and then add all this stuff in super saturated like greens and blues and all this stuff, and then eventually like bring everything into a more like a skin tone, but more in the sense of trying to simulate the skin layers. It's like they obviously they are working with latex instead of like working with something more like silicone or in the case of CG, right? Like we're dealing with the subsurface scattering. So you have to try to represent those transparent and translucent layers in a certain way, and that's the way they used to do it. It's like with color, just like simulating those layers and everything. So in our case, we're gonna go and we're gonna try to paint straight away like the colors. Obviously, I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna start with instead of like the dark tones, I'm gonna start with medium tones, so kind of like an average skin color. And then I'm gonna be bringing some areas down, so basically like making things darker, and then some areas up, like by making things lighter and using more of like little specks of color. Everything I'm gonna be doing here is gonna be very similar to what I did with the specular pass that we did the other day, and I was like, just it's gonna be a very similar approach. Like start with very broad. Let me just take this one out, so it's a little hot today. Start with very broad spray brush and very low intensity, and then it's gonna get like a little bit more of a more diffuse pass, and then we're gonna go slowly building on top of that and going like sharper with the detail and smaller with the detail. So it's gonna be very, very similar. So to start, let's get to this guy here. That's the current state of things. This is with perspective off, so perspective on has changed quite a bit. I'm still working on the egg shape, but I don't even know where this is gonna land at the end. It's just like enjoying the process and trying to figure it out his character. So let's see. Let's switch to my polygroups. Make sure that I have my polygroups there. So auto groups with UVs, and then as usual, you're just gonna hide everything but the mask. That's basically all I need to paint my stuff. What is that? Like little eyeballs in there? There's some object in there. Oh, those are the little bubbles. Yeah, the little bubbles that we added the other day. All right, so let's go. Hey.
Hey, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh man, silly me. I thought I clicked it. Okay, try this now. All right, thank you so much. That makes things easier. You guys are just like, you're just using imagination in there. All right, awesome. Okay, now you can see it. So that's the guy right there. And we're gonna start by painting just this mask. actually, let me just go to the highest level here. So I can actually hide like this. Right there. There you go. And maybe we can get a little bit of the neck is fine. I think I can actually get everything at the same time. Let's see if we can capture everything. Let's try that, highest resolution. Let's do this. Yeah, I think I got everything. Cool. Sweet. So let's just isolate this one. And then we're going to start with picking a color here. And just to make my life a little easier, and your life a little easier too, let's just sample like some average color from this old head in here. So let's just get something here, like right, maybe in the neck that's a little blurry in there. And obviously in his case, the color of the skin is going to be different, right? But just as a sample, that's basically the color I got, which is like an average there, like 170 for red, green 113, and then blue 83. So that's kind of like the color I'm going to start as a base. So I'm just going to paint this entire thing here. So I got the color selected in there. I can just make sure that I have RGB instead of mRGB. And then at 100%, and I'm just going to use color and then fill object. Obviously, I think like to go even faster, let's do this. I think it's better if I just paint the entire thing, including, you know, the rest of the head first. So let's do this. Let's just paint this to fill object. So now I have my color there. I can switch and should be fine. Okay, it's baked. So right there, right? Cool. Okay, so let's do that again. Let's select this, 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 and that. Okay, and then let's select this and go HD right here. So that's the base color I'm using right now. And then normally when I start the painting process, I try to avoid going straight to the flat color, right? Oh, look at what's happening as well. Remember, like I had to paint my my material as well to reset the whole thing. So I'm gonna have to do the same here. I'm gonna just switch to material, and then I'm gonna just fill everything with the color fill object. Right, so now it's baked. So now obviously, if I switch to any color, it's gonna obey that. That's the way you reset when you have some problems, like, you know, if you did some mistake like I did before. So instead of like going straight to the flat color like this, that you cannot see any landmarks or anything, I normally start with something that's a little light. So for example, like the skin shade, that you can see some stuff, but it's not like too overwhelming, right? And basically I'm gonna start with this. This color is a little bit on the, you know, reddish side a little bit, and it's a little bit, you know, kind of like orangey stuff. But I think it's a okay color to start. I normally would start with something not so saturated, but it's okay. We can do some work with it. So like I said before, we're gonna be exploring basically like this type of brush for most of everything. So I have this skin color spray here, and then I have another one. I think it's color spray 2. It's basically like I don't know if there's a difference in there, but it's probably very similar. So what I'm using here is basically the spray with a flow that's the default in here. Color, I would bring everything to 0, so I don't have like a problem. Like, you know, if I have alternate in here, probably like ZBrush is gonna try to mix the 2 colors I have. For example, this one in black, right? But if the color is off here, is at 0, then I should have like a pure color, and that's what I want. And placement at 0.5. So that's all it is. For the alpha itself, it's like it's kind of like small alpha in there. I don't know exactly which one is that. Maybe like 40 something. I don't even know which one that is. So it seems like the size is not too big. Yeah, I can go with any of them in here. I can even go with something small like 41. And then let's try this. So let's go and switch to my color here. I can start with a little bit stronger so I can actually see what I'm doing. Actually, I'm gonna go very strong so I can see exactly what I'm doing here. And then I'm gonna get some reference on the side. So let's see, exit here. And one thing I was looking for, example, like when you search the internet for albedo skin, right, you're gonna get the references like this, for example, which is kind of like it's like sometimes it's the scan, right, the way they capture everything. Sometimes there's some retouch as well, and sometimes you're gonna capture some of the shadows as well, right? In this case here, it seems like the shadows are eliminated. Looks like it's a good one in there, and I think there's even like one of my models here. When I saw before, I saw one of my models pop in here. But yeah, it's like that's exactly what we want to do. It's like we want to approach something that looks a little bit like this for like a white skin, right? Which in the case of my guy here, he's gonna have to have like a much more tan skin, so I'm gonna have to go darker. But I think as a starting point, I'm gonna start with something similar to that. And then one thing to consider is, like I said before, when you look at something like this, that's not like what the skin is gonna look like when you drain the skin from, like from the fat tissue that's underneath it and the blood vessels and the blood flow and all that stuff. This is basically like it's the skin color plus the subsurface scattering already baked in it, right? Although this is like a simple model here that someone was poly painting, the tone of the skin is probably going to be something much more like this than this. Because a pale skin like this, when you combine with subsurface scattering, you end up like having something that looks more like this. But the skin can be like very pale, the color itself. But the trick that we are using, like I mentioned before, we did some testing there already, is that we're going to be plugging this color here, and then in Maya we're going to be desaturating it. We're going to be removing some of the reds and introducing some of the blues in there, and just to try to counter this. And at the end, we expect to have something that looks more like this, right? So, because that's the only way we have to compare, right? Like a point of comparison is to look at someone and remove the specular, and then we probably end up with something like this. There's no way for us, like, to process internally in our brain, like, okay, I'm gonna just remove the subsurface scattering right now mentally, right? It's like there's no way. You need a point of reference. So that's basically what we're gonna be doing here. Let's see if we can open this like in high resolution. So that's basically like from a picture, right? But we're gonna be doing all this stuff by hand. And we're gonna be incorporating some of the ingrown hair as well, in his case here. And for the pores themselves, we're gonna let Arnold do the job. So we're not gonna be doing any tricks with cavity maps for pores. We're just gonna be painting the color itself, right? So let's put this one on the side here just as a small reference, but they're probably gonna be going in a different direction. So what I'm gonna start doing here, I have my brush. It's very strong right now, so you're gonna see what kind of color I'm gonna get. And I'm gonna start with some dark tones. So I'm gonna, from that point that I had in here, for example, if I click here and I drag to here, at any time I can just sample this color back, right? But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just go a little darker and more desaturated like this. So if I try to paint anything here, let's see what happens. Right? So that's basically the type of effect I'm gonna get. But what I'm gonna be doing instead is getting like a very low resolution for the entire thing. Let's see if the colors are working here. Yeah. So, I'm gonna be doing like this in a very, very subtle way. So what I'm gonna start with, this color. I'm gonna bring a little bit more saturated and darker, but I'm gonna bring my intensity here to something around, let's skip like maybe 5 or something like that. And I'm gonna start introducing some of those darker tones around the eye bags in here. And again, we're gonna be switching at some point to the flat surface. But for now, just so we can see what's going on, I can even make it a little bit stronger here so you can see. Let's see, 8. Just gonna be painting, and I'm painting in symmetry right now, obviously. So I'm gonna start with the darker tone in there. I'm gonna introduce some of that as well in the lips in here. All is gonna depend on the type of character you have. So I'm gonna add some of that darkness around the lips. And then later we're gonna be introducing like some magentas and purples and things like that. But just like to get some of the darker tones in place for now. So like, normally like the eyelids, because of the scatter, they tend to get like a little glowy in red. So naturally, when you add like some darkness to the eyelids, they work much more naturally than if you had like just the skin color in them. You know, it's like when you have just skin color, sometimes they get too red or too. But when you have a little bit of a darkness in there, seems like they work better. You know, it's like they look more natural just by having a little darker tones in there. So that's basically like for those darker areas, we're gonna be just like concentrating for now in the eyelids, top and bottom, and then the eye bags, and also the lips and around the nostrils. I mean, like with the nostrils, we're gonna have a lot of shade happening there, and also some hair that we're gonna be introducing later. But it's nice to have a little bit of you know, a darker tone in there as well, and combined with some redness as well. So for the rest of the skin here, let's start introducing some different tones now. I'm gonna pick like maybe the same color, and I'm gonna try to go slightly more on the orange side of things and a little darker. So more orange and a little darker. So for the orange parts, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna introduce some oranges, looking at here, probably around the cheeks. So around here. It's gonna be very subtle for you guys to see. I hope the compression doesn't completely kill it. But I'm gonna just like around the cheeks. At the end, you're gonna be able to see the result, obviously, but I mean like the process itself, I don't know if the compression is gonna allow you guys to see too much, because I'm gonna go very subtle first. So I'm gonna introduce some of those slightly orange tones around the eyelids in here, especially like this fold on top of his eye, and then the eye bag again. I'm gonna introduce some of that as well around the chin. Any area that I feel like it could have a little bit of, you know, it's like a little deposit of fat underneath, I'm gonna be introducing some of this slightly orange, almost like going a little bit towards the yellow around here, but nothing too strong right now. It's just like it's completely mixing with the base color that I had before. And I'm gonna be introducing this to the temporalis as well. And then slightly building into the forehead, but without touching the eyebrows too much at this point. I have some plans for the eyebrows in there. Then I'm gonna bring this to the neck as well. And you see like everything is very broad, right? Like if I exaggerate the intensity of my brush here, and so basically let's see if we can see with flat color here. Look, it looks like this. It's like it's a very faint version of this, but like this is how spread out things are, right? So you can see a little bit of that color now around the lips, and you know, it's still like very it's not like, you know, there's no blending happening, right? Like everything is very spotty right now, but we're gonna be blending slowly. So right now I have some points of reference in there in the flat color, but I still need some more points. So I'm gonna switch back here to my skin shade, and I'm gonna keep working on it. So let's switch to something. Again, I'm gonna sample, let's see, the nose in here that still has the neutral color. I'm gonna go more towards let's go towards like something a little bit more magenta, like that. And I'm gonna introduce some of that. Again, like if I do with a very strong brush, you're gonna see it looks like this, right? This type of tone right there. It's not purple, it's not red, it's right in the middle right there. But I'm gonna use this one also with a very low intensity. Let's try 4. And I'm gonna start building the lips in here. The lips around this edge in here, it's probably gonna go a little bit lighter. There is some compression happening there, it goes lighter. But I like when the lips, for example, like on purpose, this color just leaks out of it. So instead of like concentrating in keeping everything within the parameters here, within the edge, that's gonna look too much like lipstick, right? We're gonna let those things like leak. So for example, what I mean here, if I have a strong brush so you can see it, let it, you know, it's like go and pass that line and leave a little bit of that mark outside like that, right? but we're gonna do this in a very, very subtle way. So let's try, well, like 6 or something like that. So let's introduce some of that. And it's mixing with that almost brown that I had there before. It's mixing with that brown and also with the base color that I had before. It's good that, for example, like if you look at my model, the renders I posted today, it looks like the color of the lips in relation to the skin, it's a little bit distant. And in the case of someone like him, I want to try to keep a little bit closer together than, you know, so it looks like it's more integrated. And yeah, so we're going to try that. So introduce some of that. So it's very, very subtle for now, and it's quite you know, it's like a little bit more like in a purple or desaturated magenta, right? I'm gonna introduce some of that to the eyelids, but without going too crazy because we don't want to make him look like he's stoned, right? So I'm gonna just introduce some of that because a little bit of magenta here, it's always helpful mixed with that darker tone. And I'm gonna do the same for the upper lid. Introduce some of that. And since we have this color handy, let's do the nostrils as well. And so let's bring some of that, not a lot, but a little bit of that color, just have some variation here. Maybe like in this little pit, just a little bit in the neck. And then let's bring a little bit as well to this little fold in here, but not much. Just add some. Now for the nose, the tendency is for the nose to get a little bit reddish, right? But in his case here, he's so sun tanned that I don't think it's gonna be, you know, that red. We don't wanna go like a full Santa Claus for sure. We wanna keep a little bit closer to the tone of the skin. And this is one thing to avoid as well. The tendency is for people to add too much red to the nose and to the cheeks, to the point that sometimes it looks like he has, it's wearing like makeup, you know, it's like blush or something like that. It looks a little too red sometimes. It looks a little too, you know, friendly Santa Claus kind of thing. So a little bit of the red is always good, just to add some variation. But try to avoid having like too much of it, you know, otherwise it gets like too stylized. Unless it's really the intention, you know, you can go like in stylize and have more like that. So at this point here, let's see, got some of the colors in there. Let's switch now. We have, we work on the darker spots. We work with some oranges, just like the principle of it. And then some of this magenta, right? Like the color here I picked was actually 137, 66, and 66. And then very desaturated, like at 6, right, for intensity. So now we're gonna switch to something more like, we're gonna try to identify some of the areas that have more of like a cartilage or you know, it's like I would say like any fat tissue that's underneath the skin. But we're gonna try to bring it up with a color that's gonna be more like a yellow, but a very desaturated yellow. So like very much like close to white in here. So something like that. And then with that, let's see if I try to simply paint with a very faint or very slow, a very low intensity here, you're barely gonna be able to see what I'm doing. I'm actually doing some here around the eyes. So it kind of like reads more like some kind of like removing the color of it, right? But what I'm gonna do, I'm probably gonna increase the intensity a little bit more. Let's increase all the way here so you can see what I'm doing. And then instead of this alpha here, let me see what happens if I switch to an alpha 7, for example. So you're gonna be able to see because I have it cranked in there, but it's gonna look like this. See the there's specks in there? So that's because of this alpha 7 that I'm using there. Oh, and by the way, I think I'm cranking the curve a little bit because they're kind of disappearing there. So let's take a look at my alpha here. It's probably like the curve is probably tweaked. yeah, a little bit tweaked in there. And the contrast is cranked a little bit as well from 1 to 1.2. Right. Density, I don't know if those values help, but that's basically what I'm using here, 0.005, and then 1.2, and yeah, and the curve a little bit. So basically, like, it's a little sharper than the original one, right? So it's a little bit tweaked. So if I do it again, you're gonna see like I get like this type of like super small detail now, and those little specks gonna be very helpful when we try to bring the skin to life. You know, it's like those are the ones that are actually gonna bring everything to life. But we're gonna have to build things slowly and in layers. So I'm gonna start with let's get a little bit more yellow and less intensity. Let's say something like a 10. And I'm gonna bring we're gonna start with the eye bags in here. So I'm gonna make them get some of that speck in there. And then later we can actually blend basically like what I do, I paint if the mix is not happening very well, if they are too well defined, I can actually sample a color that's kind of in between those two, and then come with a very thin layer and cover everything again until I blend everything. So, but for now, we're just gonna try to introduce some of these whites around the eye bagging here, and also around this area here of the nose where the cartilage is. You know, it's gonna get a little too specky, I think, for my taste right now. I can blend, like I said, but I think I'm gonna just, in this case here, I'm gonna just switch back from this alpha. That's the alpha 7, right? I'm gonna switch back to 41, so I get a little bit more of a broad. Yeah, that's basically, I think it's gonna work better for this area. And because I'm talking about the nose in here, I'm probably gonna switch the symmetry off. So intensity a little bit smaller at 6. Gonna start painting some of that cartilage in here. And at any time, obviously, if you wanted those little specks to get closer together, so get more of like a stronger flow, you can go to the stroke brush here, and the placement, you can reduce it, right? And you can increase the flow. So you can increase the flow a little bit, reduce the placement. And now I should get like more of those dots per inch, right? Just like, so I can get more of that color baked in. I get some of that. And then obviously I'm kind of like based on the white skin, pale skin, but then later gonna be actually darkening the whole thing. But I wanna make sure that those cartilage areas are visible. I'm gonna get around this ring a little bit too. And one thing that I noticed is that, especially with older people, this area right below the eyebrows is normally very pale. I think it's the shade. I don't know what happens, but it's normally like much paler than the other areas, at least like with white guys. I have like brownish skin from Brazil, but mine is a little different from this. I'm kind of like all the way a little browny, but like with white guys, it's like normally this area gets very, very pale. In this case here, again, we're gonna be building kind of like that, but then countering later. It's just so I can have like a reference. And then let's try this. So now I have a little bit more of the white in there. Let's get, for this, using the same principle, right below the nose, I'm gonna keep the skin a little bit more pale around here as well. Considering like, okay, maybe like areas of more shade, a little bit more pale underneath. And then possibly the same. This one is gonna be a combination because around this ring in here, it's normally like, it has a pale tone to it. So I'm gonna paint with this spray all the way around the lips. I'm gonna create this little, it's almost like a little pressure, right? Like you have the, you know, it's not a cartilage, obviously, but, you know, it's like this, the lips, they have this a little, you know, it's like if you touch it, it's a little bit of a harder surface in there, right around the edge. And then we're gonna be painting that around all the way across. Right where the edge is, like this more like a, you know, the more visible area. Got some of that. I'm gonna introduce some of those tones around here as well. And then we're gonna switch to some other color. Get that. And then just like with the skin, you know, it's like when you're sculpting the pores for the skin, this is like a general pass that I'm doing right now. And everything is just like everything else, right? Like you do with your model, you block things first, and then you slowly build the detail into it, right? So what I'm doing right now is just like blocking those areas with those different colors first. I'm gonna introduce some of that around here too because of the cartilage of the nose. Gonna be a little whitish in there. And then again, like the eye bags, definitely gonna have some of that white around here. And then we're gonna build up with mixing with the darker tones as well. Same for this, guys. I'm gonna build some of that. Another thing you have to observe, for example, I don't have all the wrinkles sculpted yet, but once I have the wrinkles, I'm gonna try to keep the inside of the wrinkles slightly more red, and I'm gonna build, actually, sorry, the opposite. Slightly more white inside of the wrinkles, and then slightly more red around it, kind of like to give this impression of, you know, sunburn. You know, it's like around those bigger forms. So I'm gonna be doing that as well, but yeah, I'm gonna have to do that slowly. So around this area here, the philtrum, I'm gonna add a little bit in those edges as well, a little bit more white tone, like this pale yellow around it, just to define it more. And then I'm gonna switch, let's switch to some a little bit more like greenish tones. So the green tone I talk about is like, it's not like a full-on green, but it's kind of like, it's slightly passing the yellow, right? It's kind of like a lime green, slightly passing the yellow right here. And let's see, not so saturated. Let's see what's the color I have right now. So 210, 218, 114. And then I'm gonna introduce some of that starting with this inner area here of the eyes. So around here, introduce some of this greenish. And then if it is too strong, we can always come, and like I said, we're gonna be blending things together, right? We're gonna be sampling some neighbor color and then coming with another pass on top of it. So I'm gonna be adding just around the eyes in here. Right? And then this is gonna be propagated to around, if I'm looking at the reference in there, it's like he has quite a bit around here in this fold. And then the greenish kind of like travels towards the side of his face here. So all things combined, when you get like this yellowish tone and greenish tone combined with the slightly reddish skin color that he had, you're gonna end up like with a color that's kind of like a little bit more orange than what we had before. But as long as we are not keeping everything so pink, you know, it's like when you have the entire skin looking like it's all like variations of the same kind of pink, it looks like it's almost like a little young pig, you know. It's like you paint a little young pig. And it's important to have like those greens and oranges and yellows everywhere, you know. It's like especially in those areas, just to get your brain out of it, you know. It's like, so it doesn't look like a single color that's all the way across. It looks very plasticky, not plasticky, but I would say like very silicone looking or waxy when you have like the same kind of color all the way across, you know. So I'm going like with that brush with the same color, slightly green, just introducing some of that, but with a very, very low pressure in my mouse. And I'm gonna travel around now like the zygomatic bone in here, and I'm gonna try to introduce some of that around here. Not so intense, but with a little bit of intensity. And then again, a little bit more in the nose, and then traveling all the way to the base right here. And now we can switch to the, I believe we're in a good spot to switch to the flat color, and just add a little bit more in here so I can actually see it. I don't really have my sculpture that advanced yet, you know. It's like I barely started sculpting the, you know, the wrinkles in there like you saw the other day. I don't have anything complete, but we have to keep moving. So I'm gonna add my color and then work at the same time with the detail. And then once I have the wrinkles established, then I'm gonna be more careful about like adding color within the wrinkles, like I mentioned. So around here for the nasal labia, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna just like paint a little bit of that, you know, slightly greenish pale yellow, just like right in there. And then a little more in here. Around the eyes, we got enough. Yeah. And then now let's switch to something a little bit, let's darken things a little bit more, like overall. Let's switch to my flat color. That's basically what I have. Like I said, like it's very strong right now, right? You cannot, there's not a lot of blending happening in there, but the tones are kind of good, like in terms of like the amount of darkness I want around the eyes and stuff like that. So what I can do now, I can just sample a color around like an average here. So I can pick a color right here in between the whitish part and the darkest stuff. And then I'm gonna just like switch to a very low intensity, maybe like 2 or 3. Let's keep it 2. And then I can go and do another pass here just to start blending things. At any time you can do this as well. You can go to a subdivision level lower, right? And you can use your Z-add, not Z-add, but RGB. So press Shift for your smooth. And instead of like having Z-add, just have the RGB on. And you can use a smaller intensity, maybe like 20. And you can always do that as well. So kind of like blend with a little smooth, you know, maybe even stronger. Let's try that. Yeah, there you go. You can use that to blend as well. And then when you bring back to the highest level, you get you might get some of those little sparks still in place, but at least the overall masses are all mixed together. Let's do that with a little smooth. And then let's go back in here and blend some of those areas as well. So let me get the color of the lips as a blender. And I'm gonna blend, let's see, intensity 3. I'm gonna blend this white stuff in there a little bit more. And I'm gonna sample this one again, and then blend even more. Just to remove like the, maybe a little bit more intense, it's 6. Yeah, that's better. Just to remove like the, if it's too white. Let's get some of this color here. Let's try to sample this area. And I'm gonna introduce some of that to the rest of the face because of his tan. So let's try with maybe like 5 here. Introduce some of that darkness kind of overall here. It's very broad, right? Like I'm using just the regular spray with, what's that, 42, 41, 41. Yeah, I'm not using the thin one just yet. Just gonna really block this. Around here. Just adding a little bit more intensity to the whole thing, a little darker. Very broad, we don't have our little detail skin just yet. It's just like mostly the overall color. Some around here. Lips I have to be careful so it's not like too symmetrical, right? With the color. So let's just mix a little bit more. Let's get an average color in here. And then try to blend this a little further around the edge of the lips and the philtrum. You have to be careful here so I don't go too light because of the how you call vitiligo, right? Vitiligo, the effect, like the Michael Jackson effect. We don't want to do that. We want to keep a little bit more blended together. That looks better. This yellow is still a little detached in here. You can actually blend it back a little bit. Yeah, so the difference here between that video I mentioned and what I'm doing is that I'm not going as extreme in terms of going like super dark and then bringing everything to light again. I'm actually starting with a neutral medium color and then just like doing both, going down and up with tones. And the subsurface scatter is it's gonna do the whole magic for us and bring those things into a more natural state. Let's blend this one as well. Let's sample something that's kind of like average right here between that old color and then the white stuff. And then try to use that one just to blend. Right there. So now let's get some broader. Let's do blending a little bit more here. Just make sure that everything is starting to play together, right? Because before it was just like super white and super. So let's do that. Let's get, it's still a kind of broad brush. Let's get, sample this color here. So basically I just click drag, right? Sample in there. And then let's try to get a little bit more on the red side, very little. And then darker and a little bit more saturated. Let's see how much that adds. Okay, so let's see. Maybe a little bit more saturated, a little bit more red and saturated. Let's see if I exaggerate the color, how much we get. Yeah, I think that tone's actually pretty good. So this one is actually, let's see the color, 137, 76, and 57. And he has a little bit of, it's a desaturated kind of red. I think this one's gonna be good for, you know, it's like some spots, like eventual little spots we're gonna be painting by hand. But also I think like for the overall redness in here, so let's use like a low intensity again, 6. And I'm keeping everything very broad as usual, right? And then when we switch to our brush with a little bit more intensity and smaller, then we're gonna be able to start detailing stuff and making the skin pop. For now, we're just establishing some of those tones. Again, I can switch here to my my skin shade, and I can actually incorporate, like with no symmetry, some of that redness I was talking about before. So right here, I'm gonna add some more redness. And this one here, those bigger volumes, and leave a little bit more pale in between. But then later, I'm gonna really, you know, really go to town with this and get more detail in there. The things that we're gonna be doing next is like, it's the task, like trying to get like those little sparky little whitish spots all over the place. And then we have like the little marks in the skin, right? Like little scars, little, I don't know, bug bites, whatever it is. Those are gonna be adding like manually. And, but this one is just like an overall like blocking of the skin color. So I added some of that in there. And let's get some more of this red around the eyes as well. But again, not too crazy so it doesn't look like it's a stone. It's just like it has to mix with the colors nicely in there. And the side of the nose. Some of that. And again, the lips. Let's get that as well. And we can go a little bit pale around the edges. We can add little marks in the lips, like little white spots, little dark spots. Just make sure that everything looks a little bit more natural. Basically, just like going with the spray brush and just like trying to equalize everything, right? So you go with it. Small intensity, normally like what I'm using here is between what, like 5 and and 8, something like that, right? So nothing too crazy. And then when I want to blend stuff, I can go as low as like 3 or 4, and even using like some of the smooth brush, right, to actually blend things together. So I'm gonna go back to my highest resolution. I was painting in the one subdivision level less than that. So now I'm back to my highest. And I'm gonna be introducing some of the higher res stuff. So I'm gonna switch this one back to that brush, the Alpha 7. And this one I'm gonna have to be very low intensity. So maybe like between 3 or 4. And I'm gonna switch back to, before I do this, let me just take note of that color because I might need it to paint my little marks in the skin. Let's do that. Let me just take note, like 137, just because I liked it for some reason. 76 and then 57. So I can have that handy. And let's see. Let's switch to the yellowish stuff. So I'm gonna go around here, yellow, a little bit towards the orange, and then go almost like super pale with it, something like that. So color here 232, 204, and 157, just for reference. And then I'm gonna do this little pass that's gonna introduce, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see here, but you see like those little tiny dots in there? Let's try it again with maybe a little bit more intense so you can see it. This kind of stuff. I'm gonna go all the way around, adding these little tiny sparks in there. But I'm not gonna go with this intensity, I'm gonna go much lower. So probably like around 3 or 4. So let's try 4. And I'm gonna add this as a texture. Trying to, you know, like go all the way like in circular motion. You can see my arm in there in the video. Going in circular motion like that. And I'm introducing this little, tiny little specks of light color all over the place. This one really adds a nice little, you know, it's like extra layer of stuff. So from time to time, you can go a little bit more distant like that. And you can add like this, because if you do this, basically ZBrush is gonna use like a relative size. So you're gonna get like a broad kind of brush. So you can use that to help you with like adding more variation in the sizes, right? So I can go like more broad with the, at this distance right here, just like to cover like pretty much like everything. Seems like yeah, there's a problem here with the material again. Let me just bake this material again. Fill object with intensity at 100. Color fill. Oh, interesting. It's interesting because when I move around like that, it seems like there's a color that pops in there. For you, it's gonna look like an artifact in there, but I can see it right here. Weird. So let's go back here, 4. And then I'm gonna go a little bit smaller again. I'm gonna try to get those tiny little specks everywhere. I like this part of the pass, you know, because it really unifies everything and adds this little extra layer of detail to the whole thing. And then obviously, like once you start adding the little marks and custom stuff that's very asymmetrical, everything should start looking much more interesting. All the way here. You have to remember like that underneath the skin we have like all those little structures, right? Like we have the micro veins. We're gonna be adding some around the nose. We're gonna be talking about the little brush I use for that, and also like all those little dots. You know, it's like sometimes you, when you're older, or even when you're not old. I mean, like I have those, and I'm not that old. I'm just a little bit old. But I mean, like in my lips, I can tell, like I can see those little tiny white dots underneath underneath the skin of my lips, and then also in the eye bags around here, and they're kind of like little fat deposits, like very small ones, you know. But you see they are there, and sometimes like around the eyes, they get almost like they get bigger, almost like little pimples, right? And they're, of course, like they're not pimples, because if you try to squeeze, they're very painful. And then if you manage to squeeze one, it's basically like a little fat that comes out of it. It's weird, like just a little, sorry, being gross. But yeah, it's like, it's very interesting. Like it's all under the skin, right? Like we have all this stuff, and we like clogged pores, you know, it's like they're going to become like, I don't know, like blackheads and all that stuff. It's like, there's a lot going on with the skin. So it's cool if you can try to add a little bit of that, you know, and then obviously we're going to be painting some blackheads and the other disgusting stuff as well, because yeah. So okay, so we got a little bit of the color in there. There's a little mix now. It's looking a little bit more interesting than that plain color, right? Like just by adding this little pass of this little, you know, sparkly pale yellow, it already really helps to bring the skin to life. Again, like I'm hoping that your compression is not going to destroy this. I think like for now, I think you might be fine if you're watching this live. But if you're watching this recorded later on, you might suffer from the compression, because the color variation is so subtle that's going to be hard to see what's going on in terms of variation. What I'm going to do, and I normally do this, is to prevent that. I'm going to post a couple of screenshots, either on my Instagram or Instagram and in our group, like screenshots of how we, the progress of the paint tonight. So you can actually see the texture, at least with a little bit more resolution, so you can see what's going on, you know. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to see in the video if the compression really destroys it. Just adding more and more of that. And again, like playing with the distance, right? So I can get a little bit bigger and smaller of that detail. Just to add this kind of like, you know, when you were outside in the cold, and your cheeks go like, you know, it's like they get reddish, and you know, it's like you get this little whitish spots as well. It's almost like it's weird. You get like those blush areas, like red around the cheeks, but also some whitish stuff in between. So it's kind of like you get all spotted. So that's kind of like the kind of stuff we're trying to look for in here. Try to add some of that effect, like things more random, you know. So basically, like, that's what we have so far. Let's see in comparison to that old model. Let's just put a maybe like on the side. So this is like, it was going like super pale, right? And I had much more variation. Look, like it's always stretched out. That's basically the map I'm using for my current renderings. It looks terrible when applied to this model here, because it's all like stretched. But we are starting to build towards that, but still like in a very much like a darker tone, right? And so far with not so much detail. So now let's introduce, since we are here, we already added some of the greens. We already blended the greens back with skin tone. Let's switch to a little bit more of blues now. A blues, the blue that's kind of like towards the green here, and a little bit more desaturated like that. And I also gonna add like with low intensity, and I can switch back, instead of like having this super detailed pour, kind of like a specs, I'm gonna switch back to my Alpha 41. And I'm gonna introduce some of these blues around here, where we already introduced some of the greens before. So around the eyes right there. But again, you know, it's like as a, almost like a landmark for me, but knowing that this guy's skin is gonna be, it's not gonna be a pale skin, right? I'm gonna have to cover this and blend back a lot. So I'm gonna do the same, like a little bit of blues around the lips here. Trying not to go too crazy with intensity. And especially around the beard. So the beard, we're definitely gonna have some blue in here. But for the beard, I have like a couple of brushes that we're gonna be using to introduce some of that little, you know, stubble kind of thing. We're definitely gonna be adding some in here. One thing you have to be careful as well is that Native Americans, they don't have a lot of hair. right? So I cannot go like full on blue beard in here because the guy probably not going to have a ton of hair in here. It's probably going to be like very spread out, like the way that they grow. So I can add some of that color in there, but I cannot go like full on bluish in here like I would go with like with a very pale skinned person, you know. And then let's see now, let's introduce some of that around here in the forehead just slightly. Okay. Let's talk about like I know we are like far from, you know, done with anything here, but let's talk about the little veins. You know, it's like the micro veins are very important to add to get like some more of the detail in there. And the thing that I did when I was looking for the micro veins, I was thinking about like something in nature that looks like veins. You know, it's like fractals and all that stuff. And you know, that little trip that was mentioned the other day when I introduced the class. You know, I was like talking about everything being like an echo of everything in the universe, right? Like the structures are so similar between plants and shells and things like that, and you know, it's like shapes of galaxies. And then when you look at the, like for example, like those micro veins in our skin, one thing that came to mind was a lightning. You know, it's like in a basically like an electric storm. And then I looked for that on the internet, and I found one lightning that was kind of like a very a resolution that was kind of okay, not too low res, and the shape was pretty cool. So I captured it, and I have this brush that I got here. Let's see if I can find it. So skin vein, not this one. Let's see. I definitely saved it, but I never find my own stuff. So let's see if I can find it here. They build up untrue veins. Okay, this one. So check this out. This little alpha in there, I thought it was so interesting. So I captured it. And then that's basically what I'm using as an alpha. So I'm using a like regular standard brush combined with the drag rectangle. And this little alpha in here that I actually got the image in Photoshop, and I completely like cranked the contrast until I got like just like black and white, basically converted everything to black and white as well, and then converted into a brush. So I'm gonna let you guys find, you know, like if you want to go that direction. I mean, like roots probably would work the same way, like some roots, but this one worked very well. So if I go like very strongly here with the color, let's see, something very dark reddish like that, and I try to show you how this looks like. It looks like this, which is really cool, right? Like it looks like veins. So I can go more desaturated. So let's do that. Let's go maybe like a little reddish like that. And let's see how that works out around here. That's pretty cool, right? But obviously you have to pay attention to the angle you're applying this stuff. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna get into that kind of problem in there. So let's introduce some of them in here. Maybe not at full intensity, but something quite high. And let's get some of them around, you know, the capillaries right here around the nose. So I can get a bunch of them. Try to make a little bit more variation on the angle, and make sure like gonna apply them that they're not like all messed up because of the angle in there. For example, like right there, there's the nasal labial that's gonna mess up with it. But make sure that I'm applying just the nose itself, and it's not like destroying too much the sides in there. So let's do some of those around here as well. And then obviously, like you can add some different angles just to make sure that they are not reading as like a pattern or repetition, right? You can actually cross them a little bit like the kind of like spider web kind of thing. Let's try one here so I can blend it. Yeah, they work very well, you know, especially when you render, you're barely gonna see them. I mean, like if I show like a close-up of this area here rendered, you're definitely gonna see them. But in the context of the subsurface and all that stuff, you're barely gonna see them. So what you can do, you can actually introduce some of them in the eye bags in here as well. And then you can even add some of the, it's like different colors as well. But I'm gonna just add some around here. Even if later on that means I'm gonna have to, it's like darken the whole skin and all that stuff. But just to have some of those capillaries, it just adds something, So we're gonna do that around there. And then obviously when I'm sculpting the bumps around this area later, I'm gonna have to make sure that as I sculpt the bumps, I'm actually adding some color to it as well, right? So the bumps actually have a little bit more of like pale, so they look like little glands or whatever. So around there, I'm gonna go back in here, maybe add a few more. Then I can get like some around the nostrils here as well. I used to have like lots of nosebleeds as a kid. It's probably like all those little capillaries broken, like scratching my nose. So that. And then if it's something more custom, I normally like just paint by hand. It's like some of those guys, for example, like for Stan Winston, I was painting some of those kind of by hand. But for this small ones, it's all like, this little clever little lightning brush that really helps. So yeah, mostly like that area. Then you're gonna get some of those eventually like at the top of the nose as well. So they're probably gonna travel in here. I can add like one, especially like older guys. Like a few in here, but not like going too crazy. Even like sometimes you get some of those around here at the top. Just like I said, this stuff is gonna be very, very pale once it's rendered. But it's cool to see, it's like it's almost like a little tiny varicose veins. It's cool, right? So some of that, and then obviously like I can reinforce them by adding some more redness around it. But let's talk about the skin variations now. What we can do with like in terms of like manual stuff. So I have this one here that I just call like for whatever reason skin liver spots. I was painting some liver spots on the side of the the temporalis, and so basically like this alpha here is this little alpha 15, right? Alpha 15 right there, ZBrush. It's based on the standard brush as well. This is all default, so it's just like the regular dots. And the alpha is tweaked to look like this. So this one is not tweaked, but the contrast is cranked to 2.5. And the rest, I think, is default. So I think it's all default other than the 2.5 in here. So we can tell it's a little bit more contrasty, right? So what that one does is basically this. So if I switch to that color that I had before, which was, let's see if I remember. Let's go to color. And let's type it in here. So that was 137, and that was 76, and that was 57. So that's the color I had before. So if I crank the intensity here, that's basically what it does. It's just like, it has kind of like a harder edge, right? But it's not like a circle. So with that, you can actually create some, it's like you can paint little dots and stuff a little bit more randomly. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use like a lower resolution, lower intensity as well. So let's try maybe like 12 or 13. And I'm gonna start incorporating some spots, for example, like with my mirror off. So I'm gonna start incorporating some of them around here. A little randomly, and I was like just painting some stuff like this. And I get like right in the bottom here. And then you can paint the dot itself, but then around it, you can go with the brush a little bit more you know, it's like lower intensity around it, and just incorporate some of that, you know, it's like even like around the lips in here. Just like add one dot. It can be a tiny one, right? Tiny ones like that, just to break up that whole thing. And then from time to time, you just go with the bigger one. So for example, like you add one here, it's a little bigger, and then you go with the brush and make a little bit more less intense around it, and just blend the whole thing. We are at 10:34 right now. You guys have any questions so far? Is it okay to, can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, we can kind of see it. The compression is kind of, I don't know, squarish, but we can have a good idea.
Okay, yeah. I definitely gonna be posting this as screenshots for you guys to see, because yeah, I noticed that the compression really destroys it, and there is no setting I can, you know, I tried in the past, like tried to poke around with the settings, and nothing gives me a better result. It's weird because like it seems like the compression looks at the average color, and then it kind of mixes everything. You know, it's like thinks, oh, this color is close enough to this one. I'm just gonna represent as a bunch of squares here, and it really doesn't help. But definitely gonna be, yeah.
Yeah, we can see it better when you go like now on like flat mode.
Yeah.
On the shaded mode, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, and I think if I keep my screen without moving too much like this, it might actually resolve in a better way, instead of like if I'm moving too much, maybe like the compression is gonna get worse.
Yeah, it kind of renders it.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna stay more into a same place, I guess, and then work more. So around here, let me just move to the sides, and I'm gonna add like this area here. I'm gonna do a little bit more symmetrically, just save myself some time, because I'm probably not gonna see both sides of the temporalis at the same time. So just gonna incorporate some of that, you know, those livery spots. But at the same time, I cannot go too strongly. Let me just reduce to around like 8. Also, I can actually tweak this focal length and bring it even lower so I can get a harsher edge. So I'm gonna do that for now. So I'm gonna paint some of those guys and try to go pretty random when it comes like to the size and intensity as well. So they are not like looking all the same. Try to, you know, it's like from time to time, if you make one and you notice that you're making the same space between them, add some neighbor close enough to one of them, you know, so I can mix with it. Anything to add some kind of like variation that's not going to read as a pattern, right? Like it has to look like it's something more natural. I cannot go full on like livery spots in here. I'm just like, I guess I'm demonstrating all the stuff that I normally do with skin, but knowing that a lot of this I'm gonna have to remove myself. But it's cool if you're sculpting like different types of characters, you know, it's like you know what type of brushes I'm using for them. You know, it's like I sculpt a lot of old guys. That's basically what I do. You know, it's like you know, those livery spots. That's the way I paint them. And but this specific character here probably going to demand me to remove a lot of this stuff, and then keep things a little bit simpler and more like sun tanned. But yeah, at least like it's a good exercise for you guys to see the types of brushes I'm using, basically. So let's see, let's introduce some of those marks around here as well. And again, like I'm working asymmetrically right now, because we want to make sure that those things, they're not like, you know, mirrors of each other, other than obviously like the temporalis in there. Like I said, you're not going to see both at the same time. Actually, you see a little bit in there, but I can still go and do a pass that add a little bit of variation in there. So from time to time, I can actually pick one area and go with a bigger spot, like a bigger mark. For example, like around here, and I really introduce like a darker spot around there. And I can pick another one maybe around here, do the same. And sometimes it's good to get like a very desaturated kind of like a orange color and do the same, kind of like a broader mark that looks a little bit more like a, kind of like a, really like a, almost like when your skin is actually peeling, right? Like you leave that mark behind, it has a different tone in it. It's almost like a cycle of the skin or something, or damage, obviously. So I'm just going to town here very randomly, adding those dots. And try not to go too crazy with the pressure that I'm putting on the tablet, right? So I'm going very, very little with it. And then kind of like doing like a kind of like a large paint area, and then going like smaller and smaller and isolating it and just adding little dots. And then I can go now, for example, like this is the type of like dots I add for variation, right? Now I can go even smaller, and I can pick like, add really little tiny specks. And that can go all the way to the lips as well. I can add those little dots. Let's get a little darker in the lips, like maybe more towards kind of like a brownish color. And around the lips, I can really introduce those little dots, That happens sometimes, not everybody has them, but I think it's cool when you look a little bit more. And I cannot add too many either. It's just like from time to time, just get some of them. So talking about the lips, let's do some more working here, because right now we have this very very simple kind of coloring right now. So let's work on that. Let's make this area here in the middle a little bit more pale. So I'm gonna sample the color from around the lips, around here. Yeah, it's a little paler, and I'm gonna start painting using the same brush. Just introducing more of that right in the middle here. And going kind of like, I'm kind of skipping. So basically like I'm painting like in skipping from time to time, kind of. I can actually switch back here. Let's see if I can do that. Let's switch back to my skin shade. And then I'm gonna follow those guys here. So let's try to get some of that to be a little bit more pale right in those. And then the opposite I'm gonna be doing as well. Add some more like a darker tones, especially more towards the connection between like the upper and lower lips. Let's get some more reds in there. So let's see, switch back to flat color. Let's sample this one again, and then let's make it darker, a little bit more saturated, and a little bit more towards magenta again. Let's get right, oops, too much. Right in the middle. Fala, Roger.
E aí, Cris?
Tudo bem.
Tudo bom? So,
Yeah.
the more variation you put in your albedo, the less plastic skin you get.
The less what?
The plastic skin, like silicone skin. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you don't add a lot of variation, like if it's a constant tone all the way across, it's gonna look very, very much like silicone, And so that's why it's important, like to add those variations, because like there are different structures working underneath the skin, right? Especially like when you get, it's like around lips and eyes. It's very important to have like a good amount of variation in there. And then for the cheeks, because they're such large areas as well, it's good to have a good amount of variation as well, but being very careful that you're not actually, it's like exaggerating the reds, like I said before, because otherwise it looks too much like women's makeup, And then that subtle effect that we wanted to have, that's basically like just having like something like, it's like it's like little dots like underneath the skin, like it's like everywhere here, kind of like showing through. They start looking too much like a blush kind of thing, So yeah, that's my advice. Like try to be a little careful with that. Color.
Hey, Chris.
So, yes.
I know we spoke about it a little bit last time when it comes to different skin tones.
Darker skin, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to like see an application, like if this was, you know, like one of your references, like you were talking about that sun like burnt skin, if you
Yeah.
were going to go for that tone, which which color here would be the one mostly affected?
Yeah, I would like start with something like I would maybe like sample something that's like in middle of the road in here, and you start with that tone as the main tone. You see, like around the ears in here, it goes pretty light. But in his case here, obviously, like all kinds of skin. But I would probably sample something around his cheeks, around this area here, and then we
Okay.
start building with that. And then there are a couple of tones, for example, like the ones I mentioned before, the magentas and everything. You're still gonna apply like around the lips. There's more of the like the kind of like a very dark desaturated magenta combined with a little bit of a brown. That would be applied more like in his case here, the top lips, right? But then a lot of those tones, for example, is just going to be a variation of what I said. So instead of like sampling back like the mid color that would be like in the case of my guy in there lighter, in this case here it's going to be darker, but then you're going to go just a little bit lighter around the lips, the same way I'm going.
The lips, the ears, the nostrils, and so on.
Same thing, yeah. You're going to use that as your base parameter, and then you see like the top eyelids in here, darker than the rest, just like we were doing. For example, like the eyelids in here, like this area here that's going lighter as well because of the cartilage. There's a lot of, I think it's pretty much like in the ballpark, you know?
Okay.
Yeah. And in his case here, I mean, like the ears are going very light, especially around here. Very interesting. Yeah. This is something that I'm planning for I'm going to have like, probably like, I'm going to go for Asian character in January for the class of January. But then in March, when I'm back, I'm definitely going to go with the African face. And then in that case, I'm going to be really digging into this, you know, but it's going to take a little while until I get there. But yeah, man, I think if you use the same logic I'm using, but just using a different skin tone as a start.
Basically picking the different colors.
Yeah.
Got it.
And going up and down in relation to that tone, you know.
Okay, so if so regardless of the skin tone that we're doing, if we sort of use that same logic of picking sort of mid-tone like highlights and darker colors for the main colors and you know, magenta for the lips and so on and so forth, if we sort of keep more or less that formula, we should be able to apply it across any type of skin tone, right?
I believe so, man. I believe so. It's something that I have to do more. I mean, like I did like my main character for my short movie when I did like that was the short movie that I actually got all my first highlights and everything on forums. Was like he was a black guy. He was like a plumber, and the story was kind of funny because he was supposed to be this plumber that who is called to fix some pipes in this old lady's house. And then, but it's a very freaky house, and she's like, nobody knows if she's alive or dead in the story. and then he freaks out, so he has like all those funny faces that he makes and everything. But when I did that, it was pretty much like he was pretty much a cartoon, you know. So it's not like I explored a lot of like the variations of the skin, but I'm really curious to do that. You know, it's like I want to have like those skin variations kind of like memorized, but just by observing it here, I can tell that I can totally incorporate what I'm saying here, just like adapting to a darker tone. You know, it's like it's. I would say like it's actually in a way it's richer in terms of the tones present in here because there's all kinds of stuff. You know, it's like this area here is darker. There's some interesting oranges in there. You still get some of the greens as well. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's yeah, I'm you know excited to do and tackle this eventually. But yeah, very cool.
All right, thanks.
No problem, man. And your guy was looking really cool. I mean, like it needs more variation definitely for those tones. And I think what I'm saying here is going to help you to introduce some of that. You know, it's like especially with cartilage and all that stuff. But the skin tone was kind of going the right direction. You know, I thought it was a little bit maybe saturated. Maybe if you desaturate a little bit the brown of the skin, it would look a little better. But it was definitely the ballpark. You know.
Okay, cool. Definitely. Like I haven't finished my albedo. I was waiting for this video.
Uh-huh.
So once it's uploaded, I'm just going to sort of apply that, like create my map based on this and readjust. I'll bring down the saturation as you suggested.
Yeah, man, and I hope you can see it. You know, it's like, because if you can't, just remember I'm gonna post this as screenshots. So I think like if I post some like close-ups, it's gonna be easier for you to see. You know.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. I don't know how much work it is, but would it be possible to post even a screenshot now in the chat?
Oh, now?
I don't know if it's possible.
Let's see. I don't know. I don't know how it works. Well, what I can do here, let me get like an area like this, for example.
Because whenever you move, the pixel readjusts.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so
let's do this. Check this out. So Alt print screen. Let's do a quick Photoshop here, and I save for you guys. Those are the renders I had from today. So let's see. It's pretty much like in the orange kind of space, but it's because we have to counter that, like I said. So let's just do a little screenshot around. Oh, geez. Here. Let's crop this. And then let's save it. Save as. Let's put like a good resolution to JPEG. And then I'll B.1. And keep like maximum resolution, maximum compression, okay? Or minimum compression. And then let's see if we can put this one in the chat. Let's see, file. Oops. How you add? I never added anything here. So just file, and then your computer. Okay.
I think you might even be able to
just drag and drop.
Yeah.
See personal projects and Native American. Okay. And images. I'll be the. Let's try that. Let's see if it goes. Do you guys get it?
Yep.
Okay, let's try to double click. Let's see what happens. Let me know if it worked for you.
I just saved it on my desktop, so.
Oh, okay.
Come on.
But yeah, it's the same. Okay, yeah, it's gonna save for me as well. Okay, let's just see if it's gonna work.
Yep.
Did it open?
Yep. So much better. So much better. Okay, this is super useful.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna try to, once I have more progress in it, I'm gonna try to post more stuff, you know, so you guys can see like the actual paint, because like I said, the compression, I mean, there's nothing I can do, you know. It's like Zoom is really good for capturing all those menus and stuff and keeps super sharp, but when it comes like to very similar colors, man, it's like it's hard. You can barely see anything. But yeah, so let's,
yeah, this is awesome. Thank you.
No problem. And yeah, if we can paint more in here, I can definitely add more stuff right after the class as well. And so let's see if we can incorporate. That brush I mentioned to create like the stubble. Okay, so there's this brush here. I can show you my settings as well. So let's see. Stubble right here. So I have stubble and stubble batter. Oh, stubble batter. Let's go for that one. Sounds really good. So so the way I have it set is basically like I have some intensity as well for the sculpting part. And instead of like sculpting in a positive way, I'm using the negative. So basically like I'm using that to create some kind of like a ingrown hair. So it's like kind of like a little deeper, and then with intensity. So basically I'm sculpting and painting at the same time. I'm gonna turn off the sculpting for now, and I'm gonna keep just as RGB. And I'm gonna switch to a color like gray, not completely black, but gray like that. And let's just say, let's see what it's doing right now. It's getting all those little dots, right? I can make it a little bit smaller to make sure that I get like very, very tiny dots. So what I have right now for settings is this. So I have my flow, which is like a 0.34, so not like the 0.5, that's the default. And the placement is 0.3333. So basically that's the setting I have. For the alpha, I'm gonna start with the alpha, let's do like a small one, alpha 40. And let's see what the alpha 40 does. Yeah, I think alpha 40 is even better. So 40, and then let's see how I tweak my alpha. So 40, and then I'm really cranking this into a point. So I really exaggerate that point in there. And then everything else looks default to me. So contrast set 1. So the difference here is just like this really, really spiky version here. So not only I'm using a very tiny alpha, which is this 40 here, is very tiny in there, but I'm also cranking the alpha curve to make it even smaller, right? And then now if I paint stuff here, you're gonna see I get those tiny little dots like that. So the same way we are actually blocking things to have you know, it's like a little bit more diffuse version of it underneath with a little bit lower intensity. I'm gonna do the same here with those. So I'm gonna start with 2 passes. The first I'm gonna do like with a very low intensity, maybe like something like 10. And I'm gonna use symmetry for now. And I'm gonna go like very broad with the brush and then try to get some of that stuff to read kind of like that. So like it's a little bit darker. Again, like it's gonna be maybe harder for you guys to see, but I'm gonna describe here as the best I can. And then you're gonna see the screenshots. So basically like I'm using like a bigger version of that, just like with the smaller intensity. I'm gonna go even smaller at 6. And I'm gonna get some of those dots in there. Kind of like very fast circular motions, you can tell looking at my hand. Because like I said before, the gesture is gonna really affect the way you add color and everything in ZBrush, right? Like the gesture, like if you do faster, you're gonna get those dots to be more spread out. If you go slower, then you're gonna get them pretty compressed together. So like pretty much like getting some of that in there. So you can see like it's just like they're very diffuse. They're not like very well defined. But now I can go with a higher intensity, like 30 something. And then now I can go and get the little ones in place. Let's see, maybe I can go a little bit more further apart. So let's try the spray here. The flow I'm gonna bring it down a little bit. So from 34, maybe like 24. And I'm gonna start around here with a very fast motion as well. So let's just double check if I have my stroke with lazy mouse. Yeah, I have lazy mouse. I'm gonna turn it off. Let's see if I can get a decent result. Yeah, it's gonna be faster without the lazy mouse. So let's try that. So let's add some of this stuff around here. And I'm doing everything in circular motion, okay? Because I don't wanna do anything that looks too linear. So I'm kind of like filling the gaps by looking at what I'm doing and seeing how they are spreading and then going back where the gaps are and then trying to paint some more in there.
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
A question.
Yes.
Why don't you use also the sculpting in this case?
I was thinking about like doing a pass without it and then doing another one with the sculpting just to get a little bit more variation, right? But yeah, I definitely gonna use, but I just like gonna do a first pass without it first.
Okay.
Yeah. And that, like I said, like, I mean, like I'm really afraid of going too crazy with this because like Native Americans normally don't have a ton of hair. And I'm afraid that, you know, if I add too much, so I'm gonna just do this. And I don't even know how they shaved, you know, it's like back in the day it was like a knife. Probably a knife, right? Something sharp. Okay, and then I'm gonna add some around this area here. And around this area here, I think I'm gonna add some of the sculpting pass as well. So let's try that. startup material back. And then let's click the Z sub. And then as I sculpt, you're probably gonna see those little dots. See, like they're really strong right there. Let's reduce them to something not so strong. Maybe let's try 9. Yeah, I think that should be better. And then I'm gonna be painting and sculpting at the same time. Let's maybe a little bit less than 9, try 7. And switch back to my color so I can see where they are. And then let's start, let's do everything asymmetrical here because it's such a hero area. Making sure that I'm not touching the lips in the process. Can you guys see the dots like in the compression, or is like, or barely?
Kinda.
Kinda, okay, yeah. It's another one that you're definitely gonna see a lot when I post this because yeah, they're very well defined. I cannot go too crazy with them for sure. I mean, like this is an idealized model, right? So in theory, I could go crazy with stuff, but at the same time, you want to make sure that things are believable in a way, right? Like, it's like you have to always like think about the background of those characters, you know. And I really don't want to go like. I could argue like, okay, so he's mixed race, right? Like, but not really. I want to keep it more like true. And now the challenge for me in this one here is because I don't have a lot of experience doing braids, and I think I'm going to go for braids with this guy. So I'm definitely going to have to take a look at some material out there on what's the best approach to do braids with XGen, because XGen, you can use the core version, which is what a lot of people use, but I only use the interactive one. And the interactive, I know that sometimes you get some limitations in there. It's much more fun to use than the other one, but you're definitely gonna, have some limitations. So I think I can do it. It's just a matter of like, the thing is like, because we were sculpting for a portrait, we can cheat with a lot of stuff, man. We can get away with murder. For example, like you can start with guidelines, like I did for Jessica, my wife, and then start with the guidelines, get everything in the ballpark, and then you can actually select the chunks of the hair, and then just like bring them together and clamp them together and do everything manually, and basically like resculpt the whole thing if you want, if you're patient about freezing certain areas and then unfreezing others. You can actually sculpt anything you want, it's just a matter of like, okay, if you're sculpting for animation, then that's not going to work, right? Because the correspondent curves are going to be probably like all the way in the other side when you resculpted everything by hand. So that's not going to be very trustworthy. But for the portrait stuff, I think we can go to town with anything we need to achieve it, I'm going to reduce the intensity just a little bit, just for extra variation. And so I'm going to introduce a little bit more in here because although there's not a lot of hair involved in here, if there's any hair, normally the mustache area is where you're going to have the most hair. So even for people not very hairy, I had a friend, a childhood friend. He was very pale and it was like he was from kind of like his last name was very Italian, but he was a very, very pale guy. And he had very little hair, but he had a very dark mustache. So if he grew this area here, he would have a mustache for sure. But yeah, this area is probably like the one that, it's like even like sometimes you see like those Chinese movies, right? Like with the Chinese master or whatever. And then, like there's no hair whatsoever other than the mustache. So it's this very long mustache. So that's the part that we're definitely going to get some hair. Okay, so now I get some of that. So it's not a lot, but it's enough to actually identify that as an area of hair. And then if I look closely like that, I can, you know, definitely gonna send you the screenshot. Let's switch to a material here, maybe this skin. So now I get a little bit of those dots, and they're baked into the model itself. So they're reading like ingrown, right? There's a lot about like the skin, right? Like some people are asking like, okay, but you're not gonna match the pores with each one of those. And I was like, actually not, you know, it's like you can be very precious about it. But the fact is like you can get very nice effect without going full on like, you know, it's like scientific on the whole thing. If I show you this one here, check this out. Let's see, the Rick Baker one. Baker images. I have a couple of images here from Rick when it didn't have like the hair on. So it was like without the beard. Let's see if I can find it right here. And it works very nicely. You know, it's like that's basically the same way I did it. So if you look around here, it's a combination of things, right? So I'm gonna get the skin in there, and I'm gonna get those little dots that I'm just like baking into the color itself. And on top of that, I'm gonna have a stubble. So the stubble is gonna help to actually blend things together, right? So I have the hair like from the peach fuzz. So there's a layer of peach fuzz we're gonna be adding. It's starting this week actually. I'm gonna add some peach fuzz. And then there's a layer of stubble. So like very, very little ones in there, which are basically like mixing with this color painting. So it's a matter of like, you know, it's like how you're gonna be combining things together to get the effect, you know. But at the end, I mean, like even for like a close-up shot, it holds up pretty well, you know. So yeah, I mean, I could go like full on. Let's just use like pore, you know, it's like one hair for each pore or whatever. But it's like too much, you know. You don't need that. It still works. Unless you really want to go like for the super close-ups, and then there's a different story, right? Like I said before, like everything I do has a ton of room for improvement, and I'm completely aware of that. But it's just like it all comes like to options, right? Like how badly I want to finish this model, right? Otherwise, I can keep poking on it forever. Yeah, definitely. There's always room. So let's get some more color. Actually, I'm in a point that I actually wouldn't mind like exporting this color map and then testing it just to see what kind of result we are getting like as a raw render. But let me just add some more variation here first. So let's get to skin color. Again, my spray is back, and I'm gonna go back to that yellow, and then very pale yellow like that. And I'm just gonna introduce some more of that. I think it's missing around the nose around here. More of that pale color. Same for around this area here. And even inside of the lips in certain areas.
Hey, Chris, one question.
Yes.
Is there any way if you have multiple UDIMs to bring a texture into ZBrush?
To bring the texture in ZBrush? Oh,
let's say if you edit the albedo in Photoshop or whatever, is there a way to bring it back?
Yeah, I mean, like the way I think about it is, if you bring, let's see, like, does it work with HD geometry? I don't remember if it does. Let's see, texture map. I think you can still bring as texture map here. Let's see what happens if I pick anything.
I don't think UVs work while it's in the HD.
Oh, it doesn't. So we're gonna have to bring outside first and then bake and then add the fine detail back.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that kind of sucks. Let's see. Let's just save this file first before I poke around. Let's see, 41, and that's gonna be albedo. Yeah. So basically, like what he said is that you're gonna have to actually do this outside of HD geometry. But the way it works is basically like this: if you have the same UVs, right? Like if the UVs didn't change, then you can actually select the poly groups that correspond to that UV set that you have, like the UDIM you want to bring back. And then you can actually just hide everything but that specific part, and then bring the map to it. So let's try to do this. Let's just save this first, and then we can try a little test.
But I guess if it's not possible to do it in HD, then you can't really keep all the detail.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if it seems like in HD, when you try to bring stuff in here, it kind of like ignores the UV space. It almost like everything becomes like you know, poly paint. So yeah, in that case, I don't think you would be able to do it. Let's see. So if I try to get anything here, see, like apply UV mapping or use poly paint without UV mapping. So yeah, requires UV mapping. It's almost like the UV map becomes like completely ignored by the HD here for some reason. Yeah, very weird. But you can always do that like at the highest level before HD, but definitely the fine detail you're gonna miss. So it's a shame.
I was just thinking about a workflow where I could already paint like the hairs with the pores, because when I was looking at it, the hair mostly comes from like the cavity in the pore. But then I would make a mask, and in Photoshop you could paint out where there's no hair, but it doesn't seem like it's really possible in here. Maybe in Mari.
Yeah, I think in Mari would be a better bet. I mean, like if you were thinking about using Mari, I would say you can still use the HD to block most of the stuff in here. But then once you move to Mari, I think you're pretty much like stuck to Mari. I don't think you're gonna be able to bring back the ZBrush, which is unfortunate. But yeah, it's the kind of stuff, you know, it's like that. I think Ofer could definitely introduce this to help us out. You know, it's like it's something I can put like in a list. That's another thing I'm gonna ask you guys. Like if you have like ZBrush suggestions, for example, I think using the class as a leverage for it, it would be nice to actually try to get some of this stuff implemented. You know, especially stuff concerning HD geometry. If you guys have like suggestions, like I would say like layers and whatever it is, you know, it's like I think we can try to use some leverage and try to get Ofer to help us out with that. He was pretty open to help, you know, last time I spoke to him. So I think we can try.
Yeah, UDIM support will be like amazing.
Right?
Right? Because like having to, well, we have like what, five UDIMs? Something like that. But how often do you work with only 5, right?
Yep.
And then being able to just like going back and forward to just use the best of, let's say, multi-worlds. Or whatever Mari is good for, whatever ZBrush is good for. And, that would be amazing.
Man, I don't know if what happened here, something bugged, I think, because I'm trying to paint here. It's not painting anything now. Let's see.
Is that a hidden mask?
What's that?
Is that maybe a hidden mask?
Yeah, I just like tried to undo like any mask I could have, and it still didn't work. Oh, now it's working. I think it was that bug when I tried to load that texture in there, and it kind of bugged in there. Since I'm here, I'm actually gonna.
Texture is on, then polypaint doesn't work, I think.
Yeah, because like I tried to put the texture in there, although it was off, it gave me that message and it kind of screwed up in that mode. But I think next time I enter is gonna be fine. So let me just try to actually paint the entire thing here with the flat color again. It's weird that I have to keep doing this all the time. So let's do that, and then let's get this guy back. Oh, since we are here, let's just export this and see what we get so far in a render. We have that time, and it's super fast to export, so why not? So let's go to blend from mine. Let's just rename this to albedo 2. Actually, I'm gonna try to synchronize. So my latest one was, I think it was 7 or 8. Let's try 8. So let's try albedo 8. And then let's go to plugin. Just turn off displacement, turn on the texture from Polypaint. And then for the size, I'm gonna use 8K. No switch morph target, don't need that. And that's it. So let's just export it right here into my source images. So that's going to be albedo 5. Okay, let's actually albedo 8. Let's do that. Let's see how fast it's going to be. So this is basically like, see, creating textures from HD polypaint. So it goes to HD for each one of those chunks and then exports them. It should take just a few seconds for each one of them. Let's see. That's the first. Meanwhile, let's just go back here and just set up our scene in Maya. Let's get this guy out of here. And let's just get this stuff ready to receive the new files. Maya's still thinking about it. There you go. And then that's basically what we're going to be replacing is this albedo. That's the one that's connected to the remap color, right? That we did that little tweak, removed a little bit of red, introduced a little bit of blue to it. So remap color, and then I'm going to replace this guy here. The albedo 5, going to go to albedo 8 now. So around here. So I exported like 4 maps already. So the last one is processing. Just pick this one. It should pop in there very fast. Yeah, each one is like 192 megs. So the 8K is really, they're really big. Okay, all of them are done. No, this one is processing now. Not quite there. Okay, 2 minutes. 2 minutes to export everything. Okay, let's do that one. Import 5 tiles. Okay, so let's see how this renders. Let's see if I have anything. It's definitely going to be a different result now. So let's see what happens here. My Arnold window. This one I was testing before. Oh, that's weird. It's not even the right one saved. Okay. Let's see what our quick paint did. I think what's gonna be better is actually the tone of the lips. Like I said before, I was looking at my Photoshop here. It's looking a little bit too, you know, it's like too red. So I wanted something that blends better with the other skin tones. And also the overall skin tone is gonna be much darker now, considering that I'm using a little tweaking here I'm gonna show you. So it should pop kind of dark, let's see. Oh, the eyes broke. That's the thing that happens sometimes, right? You have to actually reload. So you have to do like a render and then update full scene. But before I do that, let me just show you what I tweaked here. So by default, if I look at my skin shader, and if I go to my subsurface scattering, remember when I plugged the subsurface color in here, I plugged that node, that's the remap color from Maya, right? And then tweak the color in here, and then I plug the color itself, the albedo maps in there. But then I changed this as well. Check this out. There's the input and output ranges in here. And by default, the output max is like at 1. But because I wanted the skin to look a little bit darker, I actually brought it down to a 0.588. So if I crank all the way to 1, that should give me like the result that's basically like the skin I'm painting in ZBrush, which should look much paler than this. But before we do the render, let's just do the update here. So update full scene. Should take a little bit because of, you know, it has to reload those textures, but So yeah, at this point, when I want like quick results, for example, if I want to get the skin to look a little bit darker, I play with that output range in there, so I get like a fast result, just like to have an idea about it. It's kind of like more like a concept, right? And then I know how far I need to go, you know, in terms of the skin tone. With that in mind, I can go to ZBrush and, you know, try to bring things down in terms of value as well. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if you guys remember seeing like this, the new videos for the next version of ZBrush. And I think they had something that you can actually go and make the whole skin darker or lighter, right? Like there's a feature now, doesn't it? You can actually paint stuff like to go, just like kind of like bring a couple of shades down. I'm gonna have to look into it, but I think I saw something in the videos. So yeah, in terms of the difference between the color from the lips to the skin itself, I think I like this better than what I had before. It was too red. But then again, like the skin still needs a ton of variation. And I'm gonna be building up. Probably like I'm gonna be posting this video for you guys as soon as everything is finished here. Obviously, it's gonna take an hour and a half to 2 hours to just process the video. But then I probably like in the next hour, I'm gonna be painting more of the albedo, just like refining the stuff I did in there. And then I can post for you guys, and then you can see what's going on in there. But yeah, so that's what we have painted today. I want to see actually this area here. I want to see the lips area. Let's see if we can render anything. I actually tried to set up like the GPU for this this scene here, and it was extremely slow, man. I don't know. I don't know if Arnold GPU is ready. You know, it's like it's still like in alpha version or beta version. So I didn't trust it that much. But yeah, I could not set it up. I think you have to cache everything first. There's something about caching all the textures first, and then to be able to.
I tried it too. I couldn't get it to work, and then I thought perhaps it was my GPU, but then I tested in V-Ray and it was extremely fast. But yeah, I ended up sticking to CPU for some reason. It's not plug and play when it comes to GPU and Arnold.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. It seems like it wasn't ready for prime time for sure. I think they have that just like for people to play with and give feedback. I think that's what they have in their website. But yeah, I was kind of frustrated because I was imagining like, okay, I'm gonna just plug something here, and you know, gonna see what they show in the videos, right? Just like spinning around and like, uh-oh, that's not quite there. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of the. Oh, I see a little bit of them, the little stubble in there. Very, very little. So yeah, I have to be careful how much of that they're going to be adding. I want to see like the tip of the nose if you're going to be able to read some of the paler stuff that I sculpted in there. But the tone of the lips, I definitely like this better than I had before. It's just a matter of like, if I'm going to build the tones, for example, to make the entire face a little darker, I have to make sure that I follow with the same treatment for the lips. Just make sure that everything goes darker. Yeah, it's still looking a little bit more on the kind of like, I would say like orange a little bit in that space. So I definitely can play with more blues and some reds as well. But it's a good like little ballpark, you know, it's like just like for how fast we did, like in one session, just like to get something in there. It's definitely something you can get very fast, you know, it's like just like as a concept. And then as soon as you have something, you plug in your model, and then everything else becomes an iteration of that, right? That's my whole philosophy is that, you know, it's like as soon as you have stuff plugged back in Maya, either for like analyzing your model and see if things are working as a sculpture, and also for color and all this stuff, you know, it's like as soon as you have stuff, it doesn't need to be finished, just plug in Maya, because you get surprised in two ways. It's like sometimes you get surprised with how very simple things already give you like a very nice result when you have the setup. It's like with the right amount of surface scattering and everything. So sometimes you don't even need to add too much, but sometimes you actually surprise the opposite way, right? Sometimes like, oh man, I thought like all that detail I added was enough, and then all of a sudden you see like everything's kind of washed out, right? So it's always like good to see, and also have different lighting set up as well, right? So like in my case here, I have my outliner here. I can show you. I have, for example, I have my light in here. So this one I was testing. This is the sky dome, but I have another sky dome in there. That's the backup that I liked before. And then I have my softbox as well that I can use in combination or isolated. In some of those scenes, I think like in, I don't know like which one of those months the class was, but I think I had like 5 or 6 different sky domes, just like with everything plugged in there. So I could like from time to time just turn on and off, and then just see like the level of specularity in the skin, if it was working or not. And so under very dramatic different types of lighting, some of them like kind of like a site light only, some more like a global light, some more like a outdoors light, and then all that, it's like you can actually find averages as you render stuff to make sure that the skin kind of works across the board. But a lot of those values I gave you like from the get-go in terms of my coat and specular and all this stuff, it tends to work very nicely across the board with different lighting setup. But obviously you're gonna need like tweaks, and you're gonna need to paint your map, specular map accordingly, right? But at least like a ballpark is something you can start with.
How does the softbox kind of work?
The softbox?
Yeah.
What do you mean, like
the one that you have there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not on right now for this run. That's basically right. Yeah, it's the same one that we created from the very beginning. But one thing I'm gonna tell you, I mean, like I tried to do this in the past. I have a model that I actually model an octabox. So instead of like a square, it was kind of like an octagonal, right? Yeah. And then I model in Maya a grid that I put right in front of it to simulate what happens in a studio lighting. For example, like when you look at the this type of reference for eyes, let's look at here. So like if you do like a macro photography eyes, let's check it out. So around here, you see the reflection around here, for example, see like the honeycomb? Yeah, so that kind of stuff is created with this type of light. It's kind of like it's either it's like a quad box or an octabox, and they have this grid assigned to it, like right in front of it. What happens is that the grid helps to drive the rays all in the same direction, so it's kind of like a more directional kind of thing. And I did this in 3D to see what the difference would be. And I was actually surprised because you can actually control the light quite well. It's like it's a very subtle difference. Even this one has it as well right there in the corner. It's a very subtle difference, but you definitely can see a difference. It's like I even tried to do, for example, like getting this grid and extruding a little deeper and more shallow. So like if it's deeper, like the light, you're gonna have like so many shadows like contained within each one of those little squares that the light's gonna become very directional. And as you go more shallow with the grid, things start spreading more until like if you have something that's very, very shallow, then it's almost like not having it at all because the light actually takes over and it spreads all over the board. But it's very interesting because you can actually simulate like a studio lighting by adding a little artificial grid to your softbox. It's a cool experiment. I think I posted on my Facebook maybe like 3 years ago when I was doing that and showing like different stages, like with a very shallow grid and then with a very deep one. And you can definitely see the direction of the light changing,
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, what's happening with him right now? There's not a lot of color variation, right? So it's kind of like it's really still very silicone looking. But it's a matter of like going like layer by layer and exaggerating all those passes I did just now. So basically, like I can go with a little bit more variation of between like the lips and the skin, get a little bit more, you know, stronger color, and then exaggerate a little bit more like the other colors. Maybe get some spots that are a little bit more broad as well, and also like pimples and all that stuff in the skin that still has to come, right? But for a cool first pass, I think it's a nice ballpark, you know. Very pale skin. Let me show you the difference here, for example. So I have this one rendered. Let's just see what happens if I tweak that output, right? So remember, like the output for that node, the remap color node. So if I bring this output max here to 0.4, let's see what happens. It's a very much like a different tone of skin, right? Like it's much darker now. And then as you go darker with skin tone, normally like the tendency is for the specular to pop much more, right? So that's the interesting thing, you know, it's like sometimes you think someone with a darker skin has like a more oily kind of skin in a way, because like sometimes you see more shininess. But if you do this, the same thing with the same specular I have for this guy here, if I go darker with the skin, it's definitely going to look like it's more specky than it is, just because there's a contrast between the specular and the tone of the skin, you know. So sometimes we actually have to correct this and bring the specular down a little bit, otherwise it starts to look a little bit too shiny, you know. So that's another thing I have to look. But I mean, like, just as a test in here, I can try to find some references of, you know, it's like some current Native American descent people, you know, and just like try to kind of like get the tone that's kind of the ballpark. But I would rather paint that that color in ZBrush than actually fake it in here, because I want to make sure that I'm actually getting, you know, it's like exercising my observation and getting that into there. But this is like, it's nice for kind of like a concept, you know. You're just like, okay, did I go too dark between this and this, right? Is it too dark? Maybe I can go maybe a shade a little bit lighter, give it a 0.5, and then I get something around there, you know. So if it is 0.5, then I can actually try to find out that ZBrush trick and see how I can actually tweak this, you know. I'm almost completely sure I saw something under the color that was, yeah, you could actually do something to bring the entire intensity down somehow, but I don't know exactly what it is. I'm gonna have to rewatch those recent videos. If I can't find, then I'm gonna do by hand, just by going darker and darker with the skin tone for sure.
I don't know about any new feature, but there's been forever a feature where you can turn your brush into different mode, like multiply or lighten.
Yes, definitely, yeah. But I think it was something new, man. It was something. It was one of those recent videos, like from the summit, I think. And I was watching. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I don't think that's what they were doing. I thought it was something else, you know. But I might be wrong. I mean, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. My attention span is so short because I was working and I was just scrolling through. But maybe they are talking about the old features. But I have to double check it. But yeah, I think like in terms of the brushes that I'm using for this, I think that's basically the ballpark for you guys to start. It's gonna be basically like a combination of what we did for the specular stuff. Like always start with spray, never using like a constant color other than just for painting the main color for the entire thing. So I start with the plain one, but then from that point on, always start like very broad with a lower intensity, and then as you get like more into detail, you get smaller and more intensity with the brush, you know. And just like a quick recap, I start like with the darker tones for the lips and around the eyes and inside of the nostrils. Then I start like building some of the other tones, like basically like adding some greens around the eyes, a little bit around the chin as well, and then building some of the oranges around the cheeks, some reds as well around the cheeks, then some magentas around the eyelids and also the lips. So, you know, it's like it's slowly building those layers. But definitely you're going to be able to see the colors better when I post this as screenshots. So I hope I can post something about an hour and a half from now. And then you guys can use either as a reference or just as a comparison point, you know, it's like you're gonna find lots of you know, images like online. You can look for albedo skin, and then you're gonna be able to see some of those renders, you know. But yeah, I think that's it for today, and I hope it was useful, you know. It's like if you can start painting your color and start getting something in Maya, at least like to have some renders going on, that's going to be very helpful for yourself, you know, and see how far you need to push certain areas. You know, it's like, okay, I need more reds here, definitely. Always looking at comparing Maya to a reference picture instead of comparing ZBrush to a reference picture, you know. It's always more trustworthy that way, so. Excellent. All right, guys, thank you so much. And we have basically like today is the first of 8, and then basically like it's 8 lessons now, and then we are kind of done, and then we have like the last reviews. But this 8 lesson is going to be pretty intense, you know. It's like you're going to be working constantly and getting a lot of stuff done within the next couple of days. Tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to start doing the iris sculpting, and then talking about like in the next couple of days about the you know, the shaders and everything, how I sculpt the eyes. I have 2 models I use. One that has an internal you know, extrusion plus the internal bubble in there for the, you know, for the cornea, and then the other one is a little bit more simple, right? Like the simple one is the one I'm using here to render, and the more complex one is the one I use for my wife. So I'm going to be showing both, and you guys can, you know, see if you know, if you have preference for any one of them. And that's going to be an important one because the eyes are basically what make or break your model, right? Because the windows of the soul, and then yeah, it's a very important step. So that's coming up between tomorrow and the next days. And then by the end of this week, we're going to be talking about start doing like pitch fuzz. So I'm going to start very slowly with the hair explorations with XGen, so you can get your, yeah, you know, your foot wet in there with the whole XGen thing if you never used. And then slowly we're going to build up. Like we're going to start with simpler stuff, like going to do the pitch fuzz first, and then probably like nose hair, and then after that we're going to go to eyelashes, and then from eyelashes going to go eyebrows, you know, it's like, and then the longer hair going to be the last one because we're going to be using curves and stuff. And I always tell my students to brace themselves for when XGen starts, because it is buggy and it's definitely going to crash at some point, you know. So I've been lucky at you know, at this point, like we got some crashes, but wasn't too terrible, and we managed to actually, you know, come back to life. But it's definitely something that gets a little bit shaky sometimes when you get to the XGen. But as everything, you know, it's like we're gonna get over the hump. Everything is done live in here, so you know, it's like you're seeing what you're gonna get, and I'm gonna try to, you know, to tell you, know, it's like, oh, just, you know, avoid using this or that, because that's a trap to really cause a crash, you know. So there's always like a little workarounds and stuff you can try just to, you know, avoid like certain tools that are most likely going to crash XGen. So yeah, I'm here for you guys, and my intention is to actually just try to filter some stuff that might be really frustrating for you. So you know, it's like, so if you can avoid that, that's a lot of frustration you're going to be avoiding, and avoiding stress in your lives. All right, guys, have a great night, great day, and I see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Right. Good stuff. There you go.